Business Now is brought to you by the Information Technology Association of America, business development, networking, and public policy leadership for today's IT industry, and in part by the global consulting firm Booz Allen Hamilton, integrating the full range of consulting capabilities to help clients solve their toughest problems. Booz Allen is committed to delivering results that endure. Information and employment opportunities at boozallen.com. And by Bearing Point, 17,000 management and technology consultants to help public and private sector organizations around the world get things done differently. Learn how at bearingpoint.com/results. And in cooperation with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, PBS, and Maryland Public Television.
9/11 was an IT 2x4 slamming us in the face. As we watched those first responders climb into the burning towers, we realized in horror they couldn't talk to each other, couldn't talk to other agencies well enough to stay alive. Even laymen began to understand the word interoperability and how key it is in a world with too many terrorists who want to do too much harm. So we spent billions, started to feel good about ourselves, and had our complacency washed away when Katrina showed us again that we just can't communicate as well as we should when a natural disaster strikes. Okay, you got it. Better communication is key, but that's not all you need to know, as we hear in today's Tech Talk Roundtable on interoperability. Our moderator is Phil Bond, President and CEO of the Information Technology Association of America.
At Ground Zero on September 11, 2001, and along America's Gulf Coast in the days following Hurricane Katrina, we were reminded of just how important it can be for police officers, rescuers, and other first responders to be able to communicate over technologies as basic as a handheld radio. Federal, state, and local government agencies are working to make that happen. In the meantime, many more questions have arisen about how we can incorporate use of mobile phones, computers, and other devices into our response to the next natural disaster or, heaven forbid, terrorist attack. What progress have we already made? How long will we have to wait before voice and data flow seamlessly from police officer to firefighter or witness to the next tragedy? Joining us to take on this topic are Dr. David Boyd, Director, Command, Control, and Interoperability at the Department of Homeland Security; Michael Thurk, Chief Operating Officer of Avaya; Paige Atkins, Director of the Defense Spectrum Organization at the Defense Information Systems Agency; and Chris Dorbeck, Editor-in-Chief, Federal Computer Week. Welcome to all of you. Look forward to a conversation about the importance of interoperability. And Michael Thurk, give us a quick layman's definition. What are we talking about?
Well, interoperability is something when you, for anyone who walks the streets knows there's a multiplicity of devices that are available today, from phones to radios to TV, broadcasting, a wide variety of mechanisms by which we communicate. Interoperability really, if you just took it at its very basic level, imagine two people, we both communicate with each other, but you speak French and I speak English. It's not going to work out very well. Well, a lot of these systems have the same problems. They need to have a standard or a framework on which the two of us can communicate.
Help me frame the discussion here for our viewers just a little bit. Take the case of a natural disaster. People deploy, state, local, federal. When does interoperability come into play, and how does it come into play? Paige, from the DoD point of view, what do you see?
Interoperability comes into play as soon as you hit the ground. I mean, the precious moments, the first 24 or 48 hours are extremely critical. And being able to coordinate, communicate, and really structure the response is critically important to the success of that response. So it's as soon as you hit the ground, and even precursor to that in terms of ensuring that you're prepared from a planning perspective to go in to hit the ground running.
Because when you get to this site, Dr. Boyd, you want your wired devices talking to your wireless devices, different kinds of wireless devices talking to each other. This sounds incredibly technically difficult.
Interestingly, technically, it's not as difficult as it sounds. And in fact, I'd argue that interoperability starts in the planning stage as you're getting ready for the event and as you have players beginning to exchange information and talk to each other. Most of the problems in establishing interoperability aren't technology-based. They're people and process-based. We have an agreement up front that we're going to be able to work together.
And then being able to scratch out a plan together to get...
Yeah, planning is absolutely essential, and the plan needs to be in place before the event, not afterwards.
Recently, we had the opportunity to talk to Benny Thompson, chairman of the Homeland Security Committee in the House, and he touched on a similar theme. Let's take a listen to his comments, and we'll come back to the conversation.
Big challenge, big challenge. You know, the public rightfully assumes that first responders and everyone who's coming to help, coming and talking to each other in the process. You and I and many people listening to this program know that that's not the case. And so we're having a real challenge in this country, bringing the capacity for those individuals who are offering help to be able to communicate in real time. Some of it's spectrum allocation, some of it's equipment and technology, but we have to interface it so it works. We now have on the drawing board technologies that would allow those things to happen.
One of the words that always concerns me a little bit is plan, especially when you speak from industry standpoint and look at government planning. Sometimes government planning seems to go on for a very, very long period of time.
We have a tendency, especially in Washington, to think government means the federal government.
Fair enough.
The reality is that government starts at a much lower level than that. And in emergencies, in any natural disaster, the local officials are going to be the first people on the spot. It's going to be the local fire, it's going to be local police, it's going to be local emergency medical. If what you're going to build, if your interoperability solutions, whether they're data or the land mobile radio or they're using old analog equipment or the rest, meets the needs of the local guy first, then he's willing to be a part of it, and he's willing to be a part of that plan. For one thing, the local guys own, operate, and maintain more than 90% of the public safety wireless infrastructure in the United States.
So there is a balance between planning and execution. And if you look 10 years ago, we could have never predicted what we're seeing in theater today from a military standpoint. We could have never planned for that.
You look at Virginia Tech, the horrible situation that happened in Virginia Tech, but students weren't waiting to be told information. They were sharing it amongst themselves over Facebook or MySpace or all these ways that, and they are sharing information. So I think it's something that's, as these born digital generation move forward, they're going to force this to happen. You see a lot of frustration in agencies of people who say, hold on, I can do this at home, why can't I do it at work?
That is a huge undertaking to say we're going to take 21st century digital thinking and marry it to a planning process that goes from the grassroots all the way up.
Not only that, you've got to remember that the installed infrastructure is gigantic. Our best estimate is that the wireless infrastructure alone, just the LMR infrastructure, land mobile radio, probably exceeds $100 billion. And it's not federal money, it's not even state money, it's local money. And so assuming that we're going to change all those systems out so that we can make them digital capable to meet today, I think is a bit of a stretch.
Is there any roadmap for you out there?
As a retired soldier, my view is that the plan isn't what it's all about. I agree with George Marshall and some others who said that it isn't the plan that matters, it's planning that's crucial.
Very good. And when you think about your planning process, what's the biggest challenge you see on your radar screen right now?
I think unequivocally throughout all of the planning process, whether it's at the federal level, state level, or local level, is governance. There's nothing more difficult, there's nothing more complicated than governance, and that is, how do we agree that we're going to cooperate to make these things happen? How do we agree? Because governance implicates who's in charge, who's going to pay for it, who's going to control this thing, and those are all the issues that I think trigger the strongest emotions.
And if that hurdle were cleared, is there a technological advance and more interoperability waiting to happen?
The digital world's not a silver bullet. It doesn't solve everything. You buy new problems with digital. But the reality is that as we become more and more digital, a lot of these problems become easier and easier to solve. The issue, though, is that we have a huge infrastructure, like the early days of the highway system. There are a lot of gravel roads out there, and they're not going to be replaced overnight because it costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of time to do that. And there are issues involving spectrum, there are issues involving equipment, there's the kind of technology you're going to put in place.
One of the things we talk a lot about today in industry is unified communications, and really it's a euphemism to a large extent for bringing what we call multimodal communications together. Voice, data, video, all of those medium now are being presented, for example, on a desktop or a call center when E911 comes in.
You get the planning done, you get your local folks contributing their particular insight, you get the standards in place. Does it start to look like Jack Bauer on 24? You show up and you've got what kinds of information do the first responders have? Where are they pulling it from? What does the future look like?
Well, I think within the limitations that are appropriately in place because of privacy legislation and the Constitution, we would like to get to the Jack Bauer kind of thing. But think about it in a more mundane way. A fire department arriving in a major disaster would like to be able to get a clear map of where things are. On 911 in 2001, one of the first challenges was where were the buildings?
Any other thoughts on what it looks like when you look down the road?
You know, I guess we'd all like to, see or be Jack Bauer, I suppose. But I think as you look out, I really like to see this very, very high on the national agenda. This is something that can be solved.
A sense of frustration?
I have a high degree of sense of frustration because I know it's possible. I know it can happen, and to the point is, it's not a technology issue today. It's very much a policy and a will.
What you need first is interoperable communications, because if you don't have effective communications, you don't have command and control. If you don't have command and control, then you can't coordinate the rescue operation. There's a lot more interoperability out there than sometimes folks recognize. When we conducted the baseline survey, which we completed several months ago, we looked at some 22 or 25,000 different agencies across the United States. 2/3 of the agencies who responded reported that they were able to achieve interoperability for at least scheduled events.
Yeah, I would just reiterate that there's no silver bullet. We've talked about many different facets of this problem, and we have to address all of them really to get to our end state.
I think there is certainly a heightened awareness. The fact that we're doing a program like this is certainly helpful. But I also think that we just need to move faster. What
do you look for from Congress right now?
If the Congress views this as a priority, the investment will be made, the industry will follow, and we will move quickly.
The point that I would make that I think is most important of all is that they need to be consistent. That you can't just pass something today and expect that that's it. That fixes it and it'll be fixed forever. This is a problem that's going to be with us for some time.
I would also say to ensure that folks understand the complexity and that they don't get overzealous on a certain quote-unquote solution like the 700 megahertz auction. That's not going to fix it all. So don't think that that's what they have to do and they're done.
Because at the end of the day, the federal money is not a lot. A really robust communication system for a really large metropolis, say like in Ithaca, New York, is going to cost from $20 to $50 million. New York City alone in Long Island is putting in something like $1.5 billion to build that infrastructure.
But your presence here and discussion here, I think, have helped to make the point that we need to move it up on the priority list and make sure this is in front of our legislative and executive leaders on a regular basis. I want to thank all of you for being part of the conversation, fascinating conversation on interoperability and the possibilities of securing not only our country but our economy as well, as was mentioned. And thank you for watching too. Join us next time on Tech Talk.
Webster defines disaster as a sudden calamitous event bringing great damage, loss, or destruction. And in this young century, we've already had disasters in many forms. Forest fires raging out of control in California, causing billions in damage, the horrors of 9/11, and the unprecedented flooding from Katrina. Less noticed, but equally disastrous on a business level, are cyber attacks or even power outages that crash your IT system and leave you essentially helpless. So the questions: Are you prepared for the unthinkable? Can you recover quickly and keep operating? Business Now's Len Dybert reports on a comprehensive disaster recovery plan that could mean the difference between survival and catastrophic failure for business and government.
The human toll from 9/11 was devastating. Disasters like the attacks on the Twin Towers and the Pentagon, Hurricane Katrina, and the anthrax incident on Capitol Hill also forced government and business to re-examine their disaster preparedness and their ability to recover, and in some cases, their ability to survive.
In the commercial world, the generally accepted percentage is that customers who don't have a tested, viable disaster recovery plan and who experience a disaster go out of business within 3 years at a rate of 50% or greater. So it's a real requirement, it's a real need.
Mark Langer is president of Recovery Point Systems, developer of the nation's largest integrated disaster recovery site. The unprecedented 115,000 square foot hot site is one of 2 secure company facilities located in the Mid-Atlantic area. They serve federal, municipal, Fortune 500, and other commercial customers.
Recovery Point is the only company that integrates all of the pieces of disaster recovery, which previously were accomplished by multiple vendors, often in different geographic locations, into single secure facilities. The purpose of that is to expedite the recovery and make it safer and faster.
Redundancy is built in. The buildings are miles apart, but linked by dark fiber to prepare for any eventuality. For security reasons, the buildings are not marked, and we will not show the building exteriors. Langer says the structures are built to Homeland Security and federal standards for blast protection and physical security.
And there are inner and outer security rings. This is an inner ring. This is a bollard line that maintains a distance between the parking and the building so that no vehicles can get close to the building without being vetted.
The bollards pack impressive stopping power. According to consulting engineer Weidlander Associates, architect and designer of the building, the highest levels of security also are in place throughout the building. If there is a mantra at Recovery Point, it's testing. Careful, methodical testing. That's at the heart of the firm's relationship with its customers.
We really harp on and we strive to have our customers test, and testing is the ultimate evaluation tool to determine whether or not a company will survive in the event of a disaster.
Customer David Merritt is an experienced IT manager who heads information management systems for a multi-billion-dollar private pension fund based in Washington.
You want somebody that's got their act together. They've got a mission, they understand what their customers are all about, they have a plan in place, they have very secure facilities. And our biggest concern was making sure that whoever we gave our data to, we knew could take good care of it.
The customer's data is assembled from nearby certified vaults. There, Recovery Point has both electronic and physical storage.
And the advantage that we have over other vendors is our co-location. The proximity to the recovery process with the tapes cuts down on the outside influences of weather, bad traffic, multiple vendors, etc., and provides for a quicker recovery process.
Today, recovery time objectives are often measured in hours, in days, and frequently in what we call highly available or continuously available operations in which there can't be any downtime.
We have the ability to basically fully recover a customer all the way from their tape storage, their total integration of their people recovery, their servers, workstations. The facility has clearances both for the federal and GSA situations. So it truly is the ability to recover a customer all in one place.
So we also provide redundant hardware configurations which are equivalent to what our customers have in their own shops. And we're therefore in a position to take the hardware and mate it with the data and begin the recovery. When that's happened, the customer has to have a place for its people to come and work. And so we also provide comprehensive work area facilities which involve desk, chair, telephone, private offices, conference facilities, etc.
Mark Langer says what ultimately separates Recovery Point Systems from its largest competitors is not bricks and mortar. It's the commitment to customer success.
We have a team of people who are passionately committed to making sure that customers simulate and test and train successfully. It isn't enough to merely check the box and indicate that you have a plan. In a real disaster, if that plan hasn't been tested and you haven't trained and trained and trained on it, it won't work in time to save the enterprise. It won't save the mission for the federal customer. It won't save the business for the commercial customer.
I'm Len Dybert, Business Now.
Viruses, worms, spam, and bots. Sounds like a bad law firm, but really they're little buggers that are maliciously placed in our computers and which have been a primary cause for our love-hate relationship with the machines that seemingly control our lives. These intrusions can come from numerous sources, websites you visit, email you open but shouldn't have, but the fastest growing cyber threat is referred to as distributed denial of service, or DDoS. DDoS is not a common term today, but experts say that with the enormous increase and effectiveness of these attacks, we'll be hearing the term far more often. DDoS is already crippling the computer networks of politicians, governments, businesses. It's even a weapon used by organized crime. It's been cited as a potential vehicle for catastrophic terrorist attacks.
What do the Colorado Rockies, Al-Qaeda terrorists, U.S. senators, video gamers, and the Baltic country of Estonia have in common? Distributed denial of service, or DDoS attacks. DDoS attacks prevent legitimate users from using an internet service by flooding the network with more traffic than it can handle. A simplified example of a DDoS attack would be millions of spam emails sent to your PC. Your internet access would crash before the spam even reached your desktop. Al-Qaeda and organized crime have also entered the DDoS world of massive terrorist attacks. Not defending against DDoS attacks carries enormous implications. Former CIA Director James Woolsey recently shared his thoughts on how terrorists could disable the nation's electric grid.
Parts of our infrastructure, such as the electricity grid, could be used against us even without any weapons of mass destruction or anything like that, just by terrorists taking the grid down.
If this communications network is taken down, it really doesn't matter how reliable is the electric grid itself.
These attacks also threaten private industry, and as they become more frequent, some e-commerce companies have been unable to conduct business for days at a time. According to Information Week, Amazon, Yahoo, and the content delivery giant Akamai were taken down for hours, not by quality of attacks, but quantity. Today, those outages can last even longer.
And in a network business, if you're out of business for 5 days, you're pretty much out of business. It's no longer that you could sleep it out or do something or wait. You can't. You have to put in real-life solution into those situations.
Traditionally, DDoS attacks have been defended by software and hardware inside the network. But according to Andreas Antonopoulos, Internet security analyst and senior vice president and co-founder of Nemertes Research, this strategy leaves entire sections of the network vulnerable to attack.
You have to put security controls within the primary stream of traffic before it reaches your servers. Otherwise, putting your servers out there naked is a recipe for disaster.
Kwok Lee, president and CEO of RioRay, believes that the RioRay management team has leveraged its collective internet experience to create a unique solution to the DDoS problem. It has developed and is now manufacturing and delivering hardware and software platforms that filter DDoS attack traffic before it even enters the network. According to Kwok Lee, this DDoS defense is unique in the industry.
Today, we are the forerunner in bringing this new idea of putting a solution in front of the network instead of behind the network. And I believe that that's the only way that you could take out a bulk attack of any sorts into a network.
The executive team of RioRay has worked together for over a decade and is recognized for its highly successful innovations. Bill Wilson co-founded RioRay with Lee and is chairman of the board. Previously, Wilson and Lee co-founded SplitRock Services, a publicly traded network company that sold for $2 billion. Kwok Lee also co-founded Uri Systems, which was purchased by Lucent for $1 billion.
Our secret sauce, it's a set of algorithms that do multiple layers of tests on the traffic.
Nitin Mehrotra is CTO of RioRay. He previously founded Miracast, an IPTV company, after leaving management positions at Lucent and Unisys. He then joined Quark at Uri and now RioRay.
You can derive a lot of information about traffic by analyzing the packet flows and looking at just packets without looking at the underlying applications that they represented.
It's a combination of software smarts, intelligence, if you like, or a good algorithm, as well as an efficient hardware platform that can handle these things, that's been designed and architected in a way that it can withstand these types of attacks.
The IT professionals and network operators charged with uninterrupted operations and security of their networks need to be able to trust that any product they put in front of their routers is both accurate and reliable.
When you put yourself in front of the network as the very first piece of equipment that goes before any other piece of equipment in the network, you have to be a highly reliable solution.
Quark demonstrates RioRay's approach to defending critical IT networks against a real-life DDoS attack on a video server. This allows us to actually see the impact.
As you could see, is that when we launched the attack, the CPU utilization would pick up very high, and also at the same time, the actions of the movie stopped. The reason is because the attacker is now putting a lot of packets into the network, causing the video server to look at those attack packets instead of servicing the real service, and therefore nothing is going on. The denial of service is very successful. Now, if you take a look at it, we are now about 1:30 into the DDoS attack, and the movie has already come back alive, and you could see is that the CPU utilization is beginning to recover. His customer is back in service automatically and without any intervention on his part.
Despite their history of success, with first-to-market, highly sought-after answers to tough problems, they're cautious about their entry into a familiar but ever-evolving internet war.
The challenge for the front runner is to maintain a lead in the market and to build the market without letting the technology overcome them.
Pat McGittigan, the Vice President of Business Development, previously worked with both Bill and Quark as General Counsel and Senior Vice President at SplitRock.
We're seeing signs of success as we move along. As the continuing began with just a concept and an idea, so an invention, so to speak, and we move from a beta product to now a product that actually is in the market, it works. We say it does certain things, and it does do those things quite well.
The business of network security is one where adaptation and rapid change coexist. Some security companies are managing this by trying to handle every aspect of the security process. Others are focusing their efforts on just one segment.
We are specialized in the DDoS portion of the thing, and by means of not trying to be a solution to everyone, to everything, we are now acquiring an enormous amount of knowledge on DDoS traffic, how people attack networks, and what are the techniques used for the attacking of the network.
I'm Len Dybert, Business Now.
And that is this week's Business Now Capital Edition. Join us next time for more on the partnership between private industry and the public sector. If you would like more detail on individual stories from this or previous programs and to view our Tech Talk Roundtable or this program in its entirety, visit www.businessnow.com. We welcome any comments or questions you may have. You can submit those by emailing to answers@businessnow.com.